From the author of Spinsterella, A Strange and Unusual Romance comes Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get Spellbound this Halloween in paperback and ebook at online booksellers everywhere. Last week, two young teenage girls were found beaten to death out in Long Island, and these two deaths are believed to be gang-related. And the response of many of those people in that Long Island community were anger and outrage. And while they were angry and outraged, they rallied to stop the violence. However, in their attempts to rally and stop the violence, they are primarily looking at the males in the community when they really should be looking at the females in the community. Because when it comes down to gangs and gang violence, it is females who primarily enable most of the behaviors in communities that are ravaged by gangs. Who primarily supports most of the gang members? Mothers and daughters. Mothers primarily support gang members by enabling their sons to be a part of this culture. And mothers also teach their sons to be a part of this culture. When it comes down to many gang members these days, the mother is the first teacher of culture, and many mothers who were gang members then teach their sons to be a part of the gang. Also, you have other mothers who enable it by going along with their son participating in actions such as selling drugs and carrying guns and other criminal activities. And when she sees her young son going in there with a brand new pair of sneakers that he had no money for, expensive clothes, video games, she pretty much gives it a pass. And because she gives it a pass, she enables violence to continue on in her own community. And when it comes down to these mothers, they are primarily the ones, again, who are a big enabler of much of the violence in communities ravaged by gangs. And because they don't want anything to happen to their baby, a lot of other people's babies wind up losing their lives as a result of them enabling and coddling this dysfunctional son that she is raising, who pretty much is going to be a terror to the community. And because she won't deal with this terror in a constructive manner, other people like law enforcement wind up having to deal with him. However, if this female were to have dealt with her son by disciplining him and then setting boundaries with him, you would pretty much nip many of these gang situations in the bud. But because she pretty much makes excuses for this boy and lets him go out here and terrorize people by saying, my baby would never do this, my baby would never hurt anybody, or giving a pass when she sees the gang paraphernalia, the drug paraphernalia, the guns. She gives it all a pass because she doesn't want to see her son go to jail. This boy pretty much wreaks havoc in the community and then recruits others to wreak havoc on their own people. And that's all because these mothers, again, make excuses for these young males. Now, the other female who enables the behavior of gang members is the girlfriend. Now, a lot of these girls like these gang members because they want the attention and social currency they get from having a relationship with a so-called thug. And they want to be able to say that this guy is their boyfriend. Again, this is enabling behavior which allows the community to deteriorate because of the violence that these men participate in. And because these women want the social currency that they get from having a gang member boyfriend or a dope dealer boyfriend, and they're getting gifts and trinkets from these males who are giving them items as a result of their relationship, they too pretty much enable the violence that goes on in the community. Because in many cases, a lot of these females are the ones who go along with this, and because they pretty much support these guys in helping them stash their guns, stash their drugs, stash their money, and then make alibis for these guys, and then even bail these guys out of jail, these guys continue on terrorizing the community. A lot of people think that stopping the violence is something that you're going to do through a social program or a preventative program, but the ultimate solution in ending gang violence in many communities is the women in the community banding together and rallying together to deal with this issue of gangs in a constructive manner. If they deal with their sons, they can end the gang overnight, because primarily if the woman sets a boundary in the home saying that this is not going to be allowed, and this is it, these boys are pretty much going to get themselves together. And if the women, the girlfriends, start saying that they're not going to pay these guys any attention and give these guys a minute of their time, these guys will start becoming choir boys in about 8 seconds, because if they know they can't get the attention of women and they can't get the favor of women, these guys are going to stop being in a gang. And if the mothers and the daughters put that hard line in the sand, they could have ended gang violence again overnight, because your mothers, again, were to set a line in the sand saying that either you're going to be a part of the family or you're going to be a part of the gang. And if you want to be a part of the gang, you're going to have to leave the house. Guess what? The boy is going to go back to the house because he doesn't want to leave his amenities. Now, if the girls out there say that they don't want this guy because he's a loser, then these guys are going to stop being a part of the gang. It's just as simple as that. The females could shut this down. Unfortunately, many females don't want to shut this down because they get stuff out of this deal. They are getting attention, social currency, and material items out of the deal, which is why they allow gangs to terrorize their communities. And this is not just out in Long Island, but in places like Chicago, Los Angeles, and even here in New York. The whole gang issue has to be dealt with not just by the men, but primarily by the women, because it's the women who enable this. It's the women who teach this culture to their sons. It's the women who support this culture. It is the women who promote this culture. It's the women who pretty much primarily give your gangs and your criminal enterprise the platform and the foundation to stand on. Because if it weren't for them supporting these guys, selling the dope and terrorizing people in the neighborhood, they would not have a base to do it. Because only way they get a lot of turf, especially in poor areas, is because many of the women give these men refuge in their homes. These mothers give the sons refuge for their irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behavior, and the girlfriends give them refuge for their irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behavior. If these women were to pull back and leave these men to fall as a result of their own consequences, you would see your communities that are ravaged by gangs clean up overnight. If these women were to start putting these gang members out of their homes, these guys would fall by the wayside, because without these women's homes to be the base for their operations, they would have no place to go but the streets that they say they run. And when they find themselves without a base of operations, they'll soon find that those streets that they say they so-called run are actually run by the Arab store owner, the Jewish landlord, and many of the other foreigners who actually have economic power in the communities that are ravaged and terrorized by these gangs. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.